Enid is your place to enjoy downtown nightlife and stay in our new downtown hotel.
Enid is your place where young people get a great education.
Enid is your place where we can all do business.
Enid is your place to support your favorite team.
Enid is your place to see your favorite group in concert.
Enid is your place to get a good college education and start a business.
Enid is your place to worship God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Enid is your place to build new roads for a better future.
Enid is your place for great live theater.
Enid is your place to fly into, or to just learn to fly.
Enid is your place for art and science education and fun.
Enid is your place to grow your business.
Enid is your place where for over 125 years, you get the seed that you need.
Enid is your place to fly, fight, and win.
Enid is your place to catch the Junior College World Series.
Enid is your place to take Willem.
Enid is your place.
George, here's the key to the city. She's all yours. And remember, it's a great day in Enid, Oklahoma.
It is a great day in Enid, Oklahoma. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And by my calculation, you've given us 2,920 great days in Enid, Oklahoma during your term, and I appreciate it very much. I do, as do all of the citizens from Enid, Oklahoma. I have to tell you, we're moving up with technology a little bit, and we now use this kind of key. And you'll notice that there's a panic button. Well, I have that hooked up so that the chief of police and the chief of the fire department are going to get a little push button every time I feel like I need a little help. So I'm sure they're going to be really enthusiastic about that. But you know what? You've made a great foundation for us, and we really appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome the pride of Orienta, Oklahoma, a Tulsa Golden Hurricane, and the mayor of Enid, the Honorable Bill Shewey.
Thank you. I kind of jumped the gun. Got up here a little too quick, Steve. Well, 2,920 days. Tammy, Ron, you've done a good job. It's been interesting and mostly fun. We do a lot of things right in Enid, Oklahoma. Before I get started, I would like to introduce my wife. Thank you for being here. My daughter, JJ, son, Brian, and daughter-in-law, Susan. Thank you for being here. And I, too, want to thank Security National Bank and Randy Ham and the Nissan car dealership. Good morning and welcome to the 2019 State of the City Address. I would like to take a minute to thank all of you for being here and joining me this afternoon. I would like to take a moment to recognize our city manager, Gerald Gilbert, and all of the city employees who diligently work behind the scenes to ensure that our city run as smoothly and efficiently as possible. We're ever grateful for your efforts and your service. And to all of our special guests from within the community and the state, thank you for joining us as we celebrate the achievements we have made this past year. Some of the achievements started a long time ago, but they're coming to fruition in 2018, 2019. Tammy and Ron and I were on the city council when we started talking about a hotel downtown. That was 7 years, 11 months, and 2 weeks ago. But who's counting, Tammy? Hopefully they've put on the roof and they can start working on the rooms. Don't hold your breath. I am honored to have former Governor Frank Keating join us today. Thank you for being here. And I look forward to hearing what he has to say in a few short minutes. Once again, thank you for joining us today. I want to share a few of the accomplishments within the city and express my hopes and dreams for the future of this great place so many of us call home. I'm sure by now that you have noticed the construction sites scattered around Enid. Infrastructure continues to be a priority for the city of Enid with the completion of Willow Road, thanks Chris, and the addition of several new ADA safe routes. We will continue to see improvements made in the form of the revamping of Highway 81 overpass by ODOT, as well as the expected completion of Cleveland Road. Enid is home to an abundance of different shops and restaurants, serving over 130,000 people weekly. Enid is a great place full of growth. Speaking of growth, if you have recently been downtown, then I'm sure you have seen the advances made on the Best Western Glow Hotel located next to this building. The Best Western Glow is expected to open later this year. As I said before, this has been an 8-year project. We're not giving up. In May 2018, Great Plains Bank announced that their merger with Liberty Federal Savings Bank was complete. Great Plains Bank has 2 locations in Enid, one on West Broadway and one located on South Oakwood. Currently, we are in phase 3 of the Call Lake Water Project. This stage includes final design, land acquisition, environmental permitting, and bid documents for the 70-mile pipeline that will run from Call Lake back to Enid. The new water source will secure an adequate supply of water for the next 50 years. I'm sure you will agree, water is the new gold. It is the City Council's desire for the next 50 years you will have water to drink and water to take a bath or shower. That project is in the third phase of 4 phases, so we're getting that close. 4 Enid restaurants, Lotta Burger, Napoli's, or Napoli's, however you care to say it, Katie's Pantry and Lennox Drive-In were named places to eat by Discover Oklahoma. Southern House B&B was also named to the Reader's Digest list of the most charming small-town bed and breakfast in every state. Land Run Steakhouse opened December the 11th, 2018. Land Run is owned and operated by the Zaguti family, who also owns an Enid Favor, Napoli's. Wildlife, a movie starring Jake Gyllenhaal, I hope I didn't mispronounce that was primarily filmed in Enid in 2016, made its debut this year. While another Enid filmed movie, To the Stars, will make its premiere at the 2019 Sundance Film Festival in Salt Lake City, Utah. On October the 8th, 2018, ADM celebrated the opening of its modernized flour mill here in Enid. The project included a complete revamping of the mill, which was built in 1928. The additional capacity will allow ADM to continue to grow its customer base within our region. Johnston Seed Company was named top small business in Oklahoma at the 20th Annual Small Business Day hosted by Enid's own Todd Lamb. Popular convenience store Jiffy Trip set its sights on Enid and will open a store on the corner of West Garriott and Garland. The 6,000 square foot store offers an extensive supply of food and treats. Popeye's Chicken also added another store to their chain when the Enid location opened earlier this year. The restaurant is located on West O&K Garriott in front of the mall. Wind development investment in Garfield County has topped $1 billion, and more projects are in the works. On March the 8th, 2018, Integris Bass Baptist Health Center held a grand opening for their new cancer institute located here in Enid. The goal of the institute is to provide outpatient oncology services for patients across northwest Oklahoma. The facility is home to 4 private treatment bays and 8 semi-private treatment bays. Something, and it's very close to this building, is brewing in downtown Enid with the opening of the Enid Brewing Company. They're busy every night. Downtown continues to be the place to meet and drink and greet. Didn't say that right. There's more to come. A new airport terminal at Woodring Regional Airport is currently under construction. It should be open later this year. The nice part about that is all the money to pay for it is in the bank. Enid High School has had the biggest crane in Enid, Dr. Floyd, for a long time. I'm glad you got rid of it because that's making progress. They are constructing a new performing arts center and a new competitive gymnasium. Both should be open later this year. It's going to look good. Vance Air Force Base, pilot training at Vance has increased to 420 pilots per year, and that began in April of 2018. They have now started graduating pilots in 44 weeks. At that time, the training period was reduced from 44 weeks versus the former 54 weeks to train a pilot. This was an awesome accomplishment. The cost to train one pilot is approximately $1 million per pilot. A new updated dormitory is on the drawing board for the future at Vance, and the medical group facility is currently under renovation. Something is currently being remodeled at Vance Air Force Base every day, and that is good. Coke Nitrogen has just completed in 2018, and it's in the process of being completed now, completing a $1.3 billion expansion to their plant a mile east of Woodring Airport. It's a huge, huge accomplishment. For the kids, the Enid Soccer Complex at Garland Road and Roop Avenue is proceeding and is about 2 years away. This will be another great asset to the city of Enid. Finally, one important item. An excellent thing happened about 5 years ago and continues today and hopefully long into the future. Through the efforts of Enid First, comprising the City of Enid, the Greater Enid Chamber of Commerce, Main Street Enid, Visit Enid, and the Enid Regional Development Alliance all went to Roanoke State Park for 3 days. Hopefully it wasn't in August. Enid was thoroughly discussed. They developed a common logo or brand for all of us to use. It is widely used today and is a valuable marketing and public relation tool for Enid. Enid First is the name of the 5 organizations, and if you remember, Enid is mentioned in all 5 of the groups that belong to Enid First. The brand and the logo is what this pen looks like right here. Very, very professional, and it's used every day. Enid First, as I said, has met monthly for the past 5 years. For those of you in those organizations, please keep up the good work. As you can tell, I have always enjoyed watching people do their jobs. I would like to announce that the 2018 City of Enid Annual Report is available online at enid.org/annual report. So if you are interested in looking and learning more about all that has been accomplished this year, go to enid.org. As Enid continues to grow, we must remember to stay true to our character. We are boundless, vibrant, and original. Enid continues to be a symbol of strength and innovation, and I propose that we make this year, 2019, a year of action. I'm just about there. Once again, I would like to thank you for joining me here today. It is your efforts and involvement that make Enid the wonderful place it is today. On behalf of the City of Enid, thank you for your continuous support and believe in the city many of us call home. The future is bright for the City of Enid. May God bless you, may God bless Enid, and may God bless America. This is another great day in Enid, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Shewey. It's always great of a reflection. It's just amazing, everything that gets done. You know, we're so close to it because we're around it all the time, but when individuals from Midwest City and Muskogee and El Reno and other places come to Enid to see what's going on, they're just amazed at what's happening. But we're so close to it, we just kind of think that's what we do, and that's what we do. Harley Hitt, would you stand, please? I failed to mention Harley is the intern, the Enid High School senior intern in the Public Relations Department at the City of Enid. Harley was very instrumental in helping Mayor Shewey and his State of the City address. Harley, thank you. Great job. Frank Keating is an attorney by training and former partner of Holland and Knight. Formerly was the president and CEO of the American Bankers Association. Born in St. Louis, Frank grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He received his undergraduate degree at the at Georgetown University, and the law degree from the University of Oklahoma. As an OU grad, I was just trying to get to the OU real quick, I'm sorry. Undergraduate at Georgetown and a law degree from OU. His 30-year career in law enforcement and public service included service as a FBI agent, U.S. attorney and state prosecutor, Oklahoma House and Senate member, including service as a Republican Senate leader. Nationally, Frank served Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush in the Treasury, Justice, and Housing departments. In 1993, Keating returned to Oklahoma to run for governor, and he won a three-way race by a landslide and was easily reelected in 1998, becoming only the second governor in Oklahoma history to serve 2 consecutive terms. And as governor of Oklahoma, Keating won national acclaim in 1995 for his compassionate and professional handling of the bombing of the Alpha P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City. And I think we'll all agree that he was very articulate in the way that he represented the state of Oklahoma during that time, especially on national media. In the aftermath of the tragedy, he helped raise more than $6 million to fund scholarships for the nearly 200 children left with one or no parents at all. His accomplishments as governor include winning a successful public vote on right to work, tort reform, tax cuts, and major road building and education reform. You may not know this about Governor Keating. He's also the author of 5 award-winning children's books, biographies of Will Rogers, Theodore Roosevelt, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Standing Bear, the Ponca Indian chief who argued that Native Americans deserve the same rights as white Americans. And he is the recipient of 6 honorary degrees. He and his wife, Kathy, live in Oklahoma City. Unofficially, I think they have the latest numbers, 3 children and 11 grandchildren. I know the grandchildren continue to go. And if you would, at this time, a good friend of Enid, Oklahoma, would you please give the 25th governor of Oklahoma, Frank Keating, a Enid, Oklahoma welcome. Frank?
No, we stand for the mayor and your preacher. That's it. I mean, I passed from obscurity into oblivion. If there's nothing worse than being a former governor. George Nye once told me, who was at the time the only other governor to serve 2 terms. And George, as you may know, is a member of the party of Jefferson, and I'm a member of the party of Lincoln. And we were communicating together, and I said, you know, you're the first 2-term governor, a Democrat. I'm the first second 2-term governor, a Republican. How do you know when you're out of office? I mean, this is kind of awkward. You know how to use an ATM machine? Do you know how to hail a cab? I mean, isn't it pretty difficult to be an ex-governor? And he said, well, let me just say this. You'll learn very quickly that cars are not naturally cool in the summer and warm in the winter. That is not natural. And he said, and what's worse, he said, one time, my wife and I were late for a black tie event after we had left office. And we went running through the kitchen of their new home into the garage. The car was in the garage, and they both sat in the back seat. Well, that was the 3rd lesson. A car will not naturally move, summer or winter, unless you're behind the wheel. But, you know, I've got to say, Steve, thank you for your role in inviting me here today. Enid is a very special place. Steve, I tell you, you're a very special asset to the community, all the things that you do here to make this a better place. And Mayor, congratulations from all of us again to you. I was so impressed everybody stood up. When I was in politics, you always stood behind a podium because when the tomatoes came, you could duck. You know, so I'm okay on that score. But the last time I was here to give a talk was a similar event several years ago. And I always would come up and visit Norman Lamb in the nursing facility that he was in at the time. And I think about the fun times I've had in Enid and the educational times I've had in Enid. Well, Norman and I served in the state senate together. I was the only governor to serve in both houses of the legislature, to which my father once said, when is it about time for you to get a job? And I said, I'm getting there, Dad. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get there. But when I was first running for governor, and as noted, in 1993, I came home from serving President Bush, H.W., and President Reagan. I supervised nationally. Our law enforcement friends will appreciate this: the U.S. Secret Service, ATF, the U.S. Marshals, prisons, Interpol, Immigration Service, Border Patrol, you name it. I was kind of the head cop, former United States Attorney, and as Steve mentioned, former FBI agent. So I really had my, focus on law enforcement issues. And when I came here, I met with the law enforcement community. We all had a good conversation about what Oklahoma ailed or what Oklahoma didn't ail. I brought with me Jason Nelson, who's a former member of the State House and a man who worked for me when I was running for governor. What Steve didn't tell you, I'm also a regent of the University of Oklahoma, which is great. But for those of you who are OSU fans, Jason went to OSU. And he was my coordinator at Stillwater as an OSU student when I was running for governor. Son Chip is the secretary, former state trooper, secretary for Homeland Security, law enforcement, criminal justice, corrections under Governor Stitt. And I wanted Jason to come with me. Obviously, it was nice to have him drive so I could look out the window and pretend I was sightseeing. But in any event, Jason, to have him come, meet the law enforcement community and the rest here in this very wonderful, very special city, and then return, they have under their jurisdiction the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, the Narcotics Bureau, the State Bureau of Investigation, Pardon and Parole Board, the prison system, you name it. Oklahoma's challenges today, trying to find efficiency and excellence in every area of law enforcement. And I wanted, this is the first trip Jason's made out of the metro since he was appointed by Chip, and son Chip is obviously in the process of being confirmed by the state Senate. The good news is, to be a dad whose son is in the cabinet of a governor, I think is really kind of cool. The bad news is Chip isn't paid. And I said to Governor Stitt the other day, I said, how are you getting all these talented people to work for you for free? I had to pay people. And he said, well, I'm a lot more charming, a lot more intelligent, a lot more persuasive than you are. So at any rate, that's what he's doing, which I think is really quite impressive, to find citizens, you know, mayor like you and the council, who are willing to work to serve and not work to be paid. And I think that's just terrific, a wonderful thing in terms of free government and free society. But a special moment for me in Enid was when I came here in 1993. I just announced for governor. This is gospel. Just announced for governor. And see, when you're in politics, or we're in politics, you always just have to say this is gospel because no one believes you. But in any event, I made a visit to Ponca City before I came over to Enid, and I was going to have lunch with Norman Lamb. So I went to Ponca City. I appeared before the Republican Women's Club of Kay County. And I walked up to the table and I said, hi, my name is Frank Keating. Is this the Republican Women's Club of Kay County? And the lady was, you know, collecting money for lunch. And she said, yes, are you the caterer? Well, that was a good way to start the day. You know, you are a candidate for public office. Nobody has a clue who you are. But then I drove over to Enid. Norman was enough older than me than I in the state Senate. He was in the state Senate when I was also in the state House. And I felt awkward just telling him I was running. He probably thought, you're running? You got to be kidding. I ought to be running. But so we all sat down. We started talking. And I said, Norm, I just think the world of you. Todd at the time was an OSU student. Later was my driver when I was running. But I said to Norman, look, I really admire you. I think you're a wonderful human being. I just want to let you know that I'm running for governor. And he said, well, you're going to ask for my help. And I said, well, you know, there are 5 candidates in the race. I assumed that you would want to wait a while and think before you decided to support me. And he said, no, I'll support you. I'll be your chairman in Enid. I'll help put together the campaign in Enid. And from start to finish, he was my Veterans Affairs Secretary when I was governor. Norman Lamb was a quality human being. And I know you know that, but I just want to say that is representative of the type of people I knew, the type of people in Enid who are here in front of us, those who aren't in front of us anymore, and you see that wall of honor going up the corridor. So many of those people I've known over the years and were friends of my father's. So many of those people. I grew up in Tulsa. And I think about the indispensable presence of those people for the success of this community. And I'm just amazed. I haven't been here in a year and a half. Since Norman passed away, I just haven't gotten in the car and driven north. But to see what's happening there in this city, I mean, this facility and that facility and, you know, the new hotel and all of this was one of the most creative presentations that I've ever seen about a state of the city. Usually, you know, you have a script and you drone on and everybody enjoys dessert and goes home. But the visuals here and the mayor's explanation of the success of Enid, it's something that everyone in this wonderful facility ought to take great pride in, because this is not normal. In many communities, it simply is not normal. And to see the commitment of you all as community leaders to this very, very special community, I think is a great compliment to you, and it's a great compliment to Oklahoma. And I'm just really proud to be here. And I'll come back for a meal like this Steve, any day of the week. I mean, just, honor me and ask me. What I wanted to do in the few minutes that I have to present to you is to share with you some of the reflections of what occurred here 24 years ago, 2 days from now. The Oklahoma City tragedy, 24 years ago, 2 days from now, on the 19th of April, 1995. And the reason I wanted to share that is because what Oklahoma did on that tragic, awful, searing, evil day was to stand together as members of the human family, black, white, red, and yellow, urban and rural, for virtue and for competency and for goodness and for caring and sharing. And it absolutely stunned the rest of the United States and the rest of the world. My dad was from Pennsylvania, my mother was from Illinois, and I remember hearing Dad defending Oklahoma with his relatives in Pennsylvania or with my relatives in Illinois, saying, here's why I'm here, it's really a great place. But there wasn't a whole lot of touchy-feely among Dad and my mother's families when I was a little boy. And I always wondered why that was. Well, Dad told me one time, he said, when I got elected to the legislature, he said, Frank, I was on the highway commission for Dewey Bartlett, which was back in the mid-'60s. And he said, your mother and I have never darkened the door of Oklahoma City. That's just red dirt and dust and junkyards. There really isn't anything there. We focus on Tulsa and what is east, because they had relatives, who had moved to Oklahoma that lived in Bartlesville. So that was the attitude. It was red dirt and dust and junkyards, and then everything else is terra incognita. It was just, the turnpike was kind of introducing Tulsa people to the western part of the state. The state of Tulsa. When I was elected to the legislature, they said, oh, you're from the state of Tulsa. So, oh, no, that's a city over there. It's not a state. The reason I tell that story is today you would never see or hear any of it. Quite truthfully, what happened as an aftermath of the tragedy of April 19, 1995 was amazing. You may remember there was a newscaster by the name of Connie Chung, who was, CBS winner, one of the big networks. And she didn't ask me, but she asked Ron Norick, who was the mayor of Oklahoma City, can you handle this? It's like, we probably had a thumb on our mouths and, oh gosh, now what should we do? Before I forget it, I need to say that less than a year ago, I was at a meeting discussing community preparedness for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear events. And one of the people who was then, like Joe Albaugh, who runs our prison system, said, you all ought to be really proud, something you don't know. In the last 30 years, the only place in America that suffered a man-made or natural disaster that ran it themselves and everyone else worked for them, it was not where, for example, someone else like in New Orleans would take it over and then the New Orleans police and the New Orleans emergency management people would work for that person. Oklahoma City was the only place in 30 years where the faith of the nation was on the competency of the people, and we all stepped back as outsiders to let you do it. Well, they knew me from my background, but what the heck? A governor, people aren't sure, what does a mayor do in the time of natural or man-made disaster? What does a governor do? But the chief of police in Oklahoma City was competent bound, the fire chief competent bound, the emergency management coordinator competent bound. These were not political hires, these were competency hires, which is the greatest lesson that any of us as community leaders can learn from a tragedy, whether it's man-made or man-made or a natural disaster as we experience. Think about it. 319 buildings were damaged or destroyed in downtown Oklahoma City, and there was not one act of looting. Now you compare that to what occurred in New Orleans, for example, after Hurricane Katrina. 19 children were murdered, 168 of our neighbors and friends were killed. No act of looting, When the Fairfax County, Virginia Urban Search and Rescue team left, that's where I lived for many years in the Washington, D.C. metro, a guy took a dollar bill out of his pocket. I thanked all of those thousands plus individuals from all over the United States who came to help us. And he raised a dollar bill in the air and he said, "Hey, Governor, you know what this is?" I said, "Yeah, I'm in politics. That's a dollar bill. I recognize cash." And he laughed and he said, "No, this is the dollar I brought with me when I came here. It's the same dollar I'm leaving with. I never had to spend a nickel for anything during the entirety of our week stay in Oklahoma City. We would be in casual clothes, we'd go to dinner, and the check never came. We would say, "Hey, could you bring the check?" And then the check wouldn't come. "Hey, listen, I got to go to work. I pay?" They would listen to the conversation table. They say, "Those guys are those firefighters, police officers from out of state. I'll pick up the tab." Whether it was in the pre-cell phone era, telephone service, massages, haircuts, clothing, food, everything was paid for by the citizens of the state of Oklahoma. And to this day, I met a guy in the airport in Oklahoma City maybe 10, 15 years ago, and when he saw me, he said, "Oh, you're," one of these great New York accents, he said, "Hey, you're Governor Keating, right?" And I said, "Yeah, that's right. How are you?" And he introduced himself. He said, "Well, I live here now." I couldn't wait to get out of New York. He said, when the World Trade Center was first bombed in 1993, he said, we had to pay $5 for a sack of ice. You can't believe the generosity, the goodness, the kindness of the people of Oklahoma City. Now, fast forward. When the Oklahoma City Thunder was in a lot of wonderful people's minds, creative juices were starting to move. All of the owners, or a majority of the owners of the NBA, came to Oklahoma City. I was living in D.C., and I got a call from the mayor, and he and the head of the chamber said, "Would you be willing to come and with us present to the owners of the NBA? We want to try to get the franchise out of Seattle." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I flew home. They had this big shindig, an incredible light show that the chamber put on, as well as the Oklahoma City community itself. And all these owners, a majority, obviously, because they had to decide as a majority of whether or not they were going to permit this franchise to go to Oklahoma City. When the light show was over, the story, the financial story and the growth story of Oklahoma City, they wanted me to talk about the people of Oklahoma City. The kind of people who would buy the tickets to go to a Thunder game. Guy raised his hand when I had finished, the mayor had finished, chamber chairman had finished, and he said, "Is there any reason we shouldn't come?" And I laughed. I said, "No." And he said, "Let's vote." The fact is that would not have happened but for that extraordinary performance, show, integrity-filled display of goodness, charity, competency, love, and affection, each for the other, that we saw during the Oklahoma City tragedy. Matter of fact, Steve made reference to the fact that I made a battlefield decision. About $6 million came in the mail. We didn't get any money from Uncle Sam. Think about after 9/11, the average victim, you average it all out, it was huge money to avoid lawsuits. Average victim's family, probably $7 million. We had people that were impoverished. So this money that came in, I viewed it not as a life insurance policy. We had these orphan children that needed to be raised. And so I said, look, if your children lost you, we would bury you and we would put your children through college, wherever they wanted to go. If your children lost you, if you lost your children, we would help you, but this isn't a life insurance company. We're not gonna write checks to survivors because we didn't have enough money. Well, to this day, we are still providing counseling and medical care to some of those children who are now adults who are badly, badly injured in the nursery bombing aftermath. We've had one lawsuit filed against the way this was handled, later dismissed within a matter of months. And everybody as an Oklahoma and Oklahoma City community agree that the way we focused on the children to raise them and to care for them was the right thing to do. But for all of us, it was spontaneous. You think about the National Guard commander, whom I selected, and a lot of people were whispering about it. He had been in office maybe a month. Same with me. You know, he took office in January, and the bombing was in April. But I got criticized because General Cartwright was an Air Force two-star, and that just wasn't done. It should be a brown suit, not a blue suit. And he was a Democrat, gulp. That really wasn't done from a Republican appointing authority, but he already was a two-star. I thought, you know, this shows this guy is something. Steve handled it with extraordinary competency, things that I wouldn't know. Obviously, the police chief, the fire chief, the emergency manager, all of those individuals were hugely competent. Think about this. When Katrina occurred, where was the command and control center for Katrina? When the Oklahoma City tragedy occurred, where was the command and control center for Oklahoma City? I'd been governor a short time. I had no idea where it was. So they took me under the Capitol building in Oklahoma City, and that was the war room where President Clinton, my old college mate, called me and said, "What in the world happened? I hope it's not a terrorist event." And that's the first time I ever heard about terrorist events. But in any event, he sent the urban search and rescue teams from FEMA. But why was our command and control center underground? Because we have tornadoes. So why would it be above ground? Where was New Orleans, Louisiana's command and control center? It should be above ground, not underground, because they're 25 feet below sea level. It was underground. And the entire place flooded and floated away. The reason I tell that story is competency doesn't just happen. You have to elect it and you have to hire it. And we did a deal called Dark Winter before 9/11, you know, murder boarding, if you will, preparing for a natural or a man-made tragedy. And always, the lesson from Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City standard was, you better have people who know what they're doing. Otherwise, you're going to have a complete disaster. The same thing with the Sabrini panel I mentioned earlier, where I was vice chairman, but they're all generals preparing for a man-made disaster, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear event. In the case of Dark Winter, it was a smallpox attack. What do? We discovered nobody was ready. After Oklahoma City, we discovered nobody is ready because nobody knows smallpox is supposed to have been cured, and there's very little in the way of vaccines to respond to it. And a nuclear, chemical, biological event, how do you respond to that? But everybody agreed, and by the way, the U.S. Senate didn't even want a hearing on the subject, that it was so worrisome. If you want to respond, as Enid America could with great competency to a natural disaster, could you also respond with great competency to man-made disaster? And no matter what the size of the community, bad things happen, bad things will happen. So you got to prepare for it. And the murder boarding that I think, Jason, you and your team will put together city by city, county by county, makes enormous good sense, because it was by accident that after the Oklahoma City bombing, the Oklahoma City Standard was created. No acts of looting. All this excellence was the result of moral and ethical goodwill and good behavior, but also by accident. I didn't know who the police chief was. I didn't know who the fire chief was, because it was so soon after I was elected. When I was the United States Attorney, the second confirmed under Ronald Reagan over in Tulsa and all that area around Tulsa, I brought all the county sheriffs together for lunch. There are, I don't know, 15 counties, whatever the Northern District of Oklahoma has. Every one of them was introducing themselves to each other. And I thought, this is not good. If we have, let's say, an inter-county bank robbery and flight situation, for me as a sheriff to call, you as a sheriff, what's his number? Who's that person? Who's that lady who's in charge of that sheriff's office? That is bad. So the lesson of Oklahoma City, the moral, the ethical, the value lesson is in concrete. It's in marble. The goodness, the quality of the human beings that responded to the murder of our family members, our children and our friends. But the lesson of preparing for a man-made and a natural disaster cannot be forgotten, that it is so important to murder board, to exercise not just what you can expect, but that which you cannot expect. For example, what about interstate or intra-county relations with respect to fire service? Can they communicate with each other, law enforcement, one agency to another, and also in terms of healthcare responses? When we had dark winter, for example, I was the visiting governor of Oklahoma, where there was a smallpox attack downtown Oklahoma City. The President of the United States pretended to be with Sam Nunn, then a senator from Georgia. The director of the FBI, Bill Webster, or Bill Sessions, who was an ex-director of the FBI, all these military guys. But in any event, we found out that nationally we had, let's say, 200 vials of smallpox vaccinations. Well, the military said, we need it for our PR people, we'll take all of it, or 300, 500, whatever. I said, no, you're not. Here I am, the visiting governor. I said, it's all spontaneous. No, you're not. We have to get doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals into these hospitals to take care of our people, and your PR people aren't taking this stuff. We're gonna have it for the people who will heal other people. Total silence. But that's the kind of stuff you're gonna see in a real life scenario. If you're dealing with something you know, and you only have a limited way of responding, how about something you don't know? What does a nuclear event look like? What does a biological event, a radiological event look like? How do you respond to it? What do you do to respond to it? That is the unfinished business of communities in America. Certainly from my own experience nationally, that's the unfinished business for communities in Oklahoma. And I'm hoping Jason and his colleagues in the unified law enforcement response team that Chip and Jason and the governor are putting together will permit us to do. But this is too good a community, too great a community, too surviving a community not to be able to be at the leadership ranks of these kinds of intra-county, inter-county, interstate responses. Kansas isn't too far away. New Mexico is not too far away, and you need to be able to respond to these things. But I am just proud as a fellow Oklahoman that during my brief moments in the sun, I was able to stumble in to and among and with people of enormous competency that we were able to provide the nation with the Oklahoma standard. And I hope all of us here in Enid, all of us in Oklahoma, can make sure that the Oklahoma standard goes forward. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.